to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
Flag of the United States
America.
of America,
To the republic for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty, and
justice
justice
for
for all.
all.
I'd like to take a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Yep,
Okay, motion and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-4, meeting is open. All right, we're going to start the agenda with public comment. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to bring to the board's attention at tonight's meeting that's not going to be covered under another agenda item?
I got a question.
Okay,
The light up in Belgrade Lakes on the tree that's lit up, how much longer are we gonna leave that going?
I asked the business group, it could be shut off anytime, I guess. Their idea was to leave it going for a little while longer, but
It's not lit. And last week I've driven home from work. It's not, their trees aren't lit.
oh, okay. Maybe it's not lit then.
Must have just got shut off. I was up there the other night and it was on.
Okay,
Thank you. That answered my question.
so that's done. I did have a citizen from the West Road who sent an email that she said she wasn't comfortable being part of a Zoom thing. She didn't want to feel perhaps targeted. But the speed limit signs on the West Road, March of 2020, we agreed to flag those signs with orange flags. I know we had a changing of the guards and everything got a little cattywampus right about that same time frame. But they would like to know when we are going to flag those speed limit signs to alert folks to that.
So I did speak with Jason Stevens after he took office about that. I'm sure it's something that's probably slipped under his radar, so I will remind him of the board's desire to have those orange ears put on those flags, on those signs.
So if we could maybe have that done in the next couple of weeks, I can pass along to them. Does that seem feasible?
I don't want to make any promises that Jason can't keep. I will ask him if he will please do that.
Okay, can we ask him if he has some of the orange signs and orange flags, and if not, if we can get a hold of some?
Yeah, I mean, I checked the website of the company that we usually do sign business with, and they do have them. I don't think Jason had any in stock, so it would be something he'd have to acquire from that company.
Okay, unless, do we know if Morris maybe had any?
I
think
don't know that.
Morris tried to turn all of what he may have had that would be pertinent for the town over to Jason, I believe, so.
I'm sure that's true, but I don't know if those were part of the stock that Jason acquired.
Okay, so why don't I send her an email back if it's the board's pleasure, just letting her know that we did address it at the meeting and that, you know, we'll check back in a couple of weeks and see if that's done, or if you email Jason and he sends something back so that we've just got a time frame for them.
Yeah, I'll text Jason in the morning. I'll let y'all know his response.
Okay, perfect. Now, so we don't have an agenda item tonight dealing with the snowmobile trail issue that's clearly come up. So what is the board's pleasure? Is that something that we would like to take up now during public comment, or address this at the end of the meeting? Go ahead.
Melanie, I did mention in the town manager's report about the article related to the food pantry.
right.
And I think these are in the same ballpark, the snowmobile situation and the food pantry situation. So I was planning on bringing that up during the town manager's report. But if you guys want to address it now,
You had
suppose
stated that in your email,
Yeah.
that would be something we'd talk about at the, during the town manager's report.
Let's wait till the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I may not be all caught up on all the emails. I'm a little crazy busy. Okay, so we'll take that up during the town manager's report. So we'll move right along then to old business. And first up on the agenda is the approval of the December 29, 2020 Select Board meeting minutes. I'll take a motion.
Make that motion.
Second,
Second,
Motion and seconded. All those in favor? It's open for discussion. Did anybody have any concerns or questions about those minutes? All right, seeing none. Rick, what's your pleasure? I was like, he's there, he's not. Ernie,
yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Kathy?
yes,
All right, 5-4-0 against. All right, next up, we have the approval of the January 5, 2021 Select Board meeting minutes. Take a motion.
So moved.
Seconded. Ricky, was that you seconding?
Well, Kathy and I both did same time. That-
All right, we'll toss a coin. All right, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is open for discussion. Did anyone notice anything in those that should be changed?
I did not.
All right, seeing none. Kathy, what's your pleasure?
Yes,
Ernie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ricky?
Yes,
All right, 5-4-0 against. All right, next up on the agenda is the approval of the January 12, 2021 Select Board meeting minutes. I'll take a motion.
so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're open for discussion.
I'll just note that the date is 2021 at the top.
Oh, thank you. January 12th, 2021. Good catch. I looked right over that.
So did I.
All right, is there anything else that anyone noticed? All right, seeing none. Ernie, what's your pleasure?
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ricky,
yep.
Kathy? All right, 5-4-0 against. Ernie, do you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah, sure.
No, you've got like a little flag there thing, like,
I do?
yep, like the wave where you're like, please call on me.
No, I don't.
No, well, you do on my side. Does anybody else see that?
Nope.
No,
Oh my gosh, that's weird.
And
you have special vision.
putting on my hands.
Okay, next up, we have new business, consideration of board reappointments. First up, we have Craig Alexander for the Dams Committee.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That appointment is open for discussion. All right, seeing none. Ernie, what's your pleasure?
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes,
Dan,
Yes.
Rick?
Yes,
All right, 5-4-0 against. Next up, we have Wendy Dyer for the Library Board of Trustees.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
second it.
All those in favor? All right, that is open for discussion. All right, seeing none. Ricky, what's your pleasure?
Yes,
Ernie,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes,
Dan?
Yep.
All right, 5-4-0 against. Wendy's back in. Perfect. Next up on the agenda, we have the consideration of the transfer station and the recycling committee's recommendations regarding the bottle boxes first at the transfer station. Is Bruce? I don't see Bruce.
No, and I just texted him to see if he was going to be joining us, and I was really hoping Bruce and or Kenny were going to be here. Neither one of them are with us right now.
Do we want to make
I
a,
can speak to the issue if necessary.
okay,
Mr. Barrett, was that you?
It was.
Okay,
okay, you have the floor, Mike.
Well, you have a recommendation. A recommendation is to continue during the pandemic, continue what we've been doing, having the volunteer continue his good work and dividing the money 4 ways among the participants, and then following the pandemic, reverting to the existing policy.
I make a motion that we follow the recommendation of the Transfer Station and Recycling Center Committee.
I'll second it. Let's,
All right, so it's motion and seconded. It's now open. Oh, all those in favor? We have to do it that way. Okay, it's open for discussion. I do have to say, I met with the auditor the beginning of the week and did ask what their thoughts were on the town's bottles commingled with nonprofit organizations. And she did say that she thought that that was not a good policy. So she did say that town monies, no matter how they're generated, should be kept separately from other monies, just for clear accounting purposes. So I would hesitate to full on adopt this, seeing that the auditor for the town thinks that that's not best practice. I did explain that we had been doing it last year, that the board was not, we didn't realize that there had been a change and that they had been commingled. So I asked what her suggestion was, and she said that the town bottles should be handled separately.
You want the volunteer to meet with Kenny and potentially make that happen? Is that what you'd like?
Well, I guess it really wouldn't be on the volunteer shoulders. It really should be, I guess the town manager would direct how those would be handled. But if it's not in the best, if the auditor says it's not the best practice, then my suggestion would be that we follow the auditor's advice. So even if it amounts to a couple $100.
I got a couple questions on that.
Yeah.
How much money are we talking about that the town collects?
So Ricky, it's about $2,000 a year. So it's pretty minimal as far as the town is concerned.
My second thing is, why couldn't we just forget, and what's that money get used for? I guess
It goes into the undesignated fund.
So why couldn't, during this time, we just put those bottles in with the other three and would save us a lot of hassle?
So what I'm hearing you suggest is that the town just forego its cut. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I think that would be an easier solution than
Yep.
trying to come up with some other avenue for separating those bottles and delivering those and getting the proceeds from them, especially like you're pointing out, given the amount of money that's at stake here.
It's temporary. It's not a full, it's not,
Yes, absolutely.
I hope at least. And
Well, till the pandemic is over. Until, what does it say? Until a redemption center is willing to receive.
Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
And just as a reminder, we do have a redemption center that has expressed some interest after the pandemic has passed. They're not collecting bottles during the pandemic. So we feel fairly certain that, once the health situation is passed, that we have a redemption center that has expressed an interest in having our business.
Okay, Mike, you had something?
Yeah, I might just say that it's definitely our intention, once the health crisis is over, that we revert back to what was done before, which was giving everybody the money that's due to them, each group, the money that's due to them. We're in the pandemic. We've got to make it's either that or not get any money at all.
Well, no, and I totally agree that there needs to be something. We need to come up with some sort of a decision. But I also heard what the auditor said, and any town monies need to be kept clean. So if the intention is that the town then donate the proceeds, do we need a warrant article that addresses that as we would with any other donation that the town does to a nonprofit?
The bottles that show up that the town takes, how do we get them? Are they ones that they pick out of the trash, or does people actually donate them to the town?
So what happens, Dan, is the window where you drop off your bottles, they sort whatever's dropped in there to separate, let's say, wine bottles and beer bottles from pickle jars. And so that's, yeah, it's a matter of just separating what comes through the window.
So really, the money isn't being donated to the town, they're throwing it away. We're choosing to separate it out.
That's correct.
So really, if we give it to them,
It's not ours.
all we have to say it was trash, and we just, you know, I mean, it's not like we're actually collecting it for us,
Right.
you know, other than we're sorting them out.
Yeah, I think, one of Kenny's many charms is that he's very hawkish when it comes to his budget. And so he saw that as an opportunity to pick the redeemable bottles out of that trash can and generate a little bit of income for the recycling center.
So in years past, I will say, I used to donate my bottles specifically through the window for the transfer station, because the practice a number of years ago was that they would collect it and then once a month, maybe get pizza for the folks who worked at the transfer station. And apparently there was some sort of upheaval there about that, so that practice was stopped. But when that was going on, it was something that I specifically would give them my bottles for that. But that's not been the practice, my understanding is, for a handful of years now. So we were pulling that money aside.
Kathy would withdraw her motion that she made earlier on this. I would make the motion that we just split it amongst the other three for now and move on with this.
I withdraw it.
I'll second Ricky's motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Ricky, what's your pleasure?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ernie?
Yes,
Okay, 5-4-0 against. Next up is the concrete slab. So the committee recommends that the town issue a request for proposal for the construction of a concrete slab upon which the storage containers will be placed. The project would be funded through the Solid Waste Capital Reserve account. The committee recommends the RFP process proceed quickly so the slab can be poured prior to the paving project, which is scheduled to commence June 1st. Take a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor of opening for discussion? All right, 5-4. Is this concrete slab, my understanding, I believe from an email chain, was that this concrete slab would be poured to put the bottle boxes on. Am I correct?
No,
Not the bottle boxes. It's the
containers.
containers, yeah, the big steel containers.
Shipping containers, right?
Yeah,
Oh. And what,
When you first drive into the transfer station, as you turn right to go to the recycling building, the first units you see are those metal shipping containers that are stacked there right before the
Yeah, they have magazines and newspapers and everything else.
yeah, that's what they put all the bulk products in. And they're shifting, they're on gravel and they're heavy especially when they're loaded. And over time, the gravel settles and they're shifting. And so that whole area, those boxes would be pulled away. That'd be dug out. There'd be a cement pad put in there. And those containers would be set on top of the cement pad.
Do we have an estimate dollar amount?
well, it hasn't gone out to bid yet.
Yeah, when I talked with Kenny about it, because we are planning, Rick, on issuing an, oh, here's Kenny joining us right now. But when I talked with Kenny about it, his estimate was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $20,000, which will require us to go out for an RFP. And so as the committee has suggested, go out for the RFP, bring that back to the board, and then you guys can award the contract. So Kenny, am I correct? Didn't you tell me that the estimated cost of the concrete slab is about $20,000? You're muted.
You can
Hello,
see
Kenny.
his beard moving.
Kenny,
Try
you're
it again, Kenny.
Kenny, you're still muted.
Stop doing that.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, that was the estimate a year and a half ago.
Now,
And that, by the way, that was just an estimate.
right. What size are we talking, Kenny?
I don't have the actual paperwork right in front of me. It was like 40 foot by 60 foot or something like that. All of that information, you should have that in your packet.
No, I did not include the RFP in the
Oh.
packet, Kenny.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
So did you create an RFP?
We have one drafted. What I'd like to do is present that to the transfer station committee. Let them look at it and sign off. It would be especially helpful, you know, with someone with Bruce's knowledge, for instance. And we also have Tom Daniels, who is an engineer, who is on that committee. So it'd be helpful, I think, to have them take a look at it, bless it, and then we could bring it to the board.
Okay, and that's got all the dimensions in it and all that,
It
all
would,
the specs. Okay.
yes.
And is it possible that we can find when we purchased the storage containers, it seems that when we did that, there was a long-term plan that the Transfer and Recycling Committee had come up with that. And did we just not execute that? Is that why we're here now needing to do something?
I'm not aware of that was before my time, Melanie. At this point, what's happening with those storage containers, the way that they were installed, they're leaning and they're beginning to fall over. They've gotten to the point where we can't open some of the doors. They've sunk into the ground because they were just put on gravel. They were just put on the earth. So they're sinking down. That's why we need to put that pad in at this point.
Right.
That was a wicked good plan on our part.
Jack has got his hand up.
No, containers, put lots of stuff in them.
Yeah, when you're loading them with 40 tons of magazines, they tend to sink a bit. So it's pushing the retaining walls out. So it is an issue.
And would we have to haul any fill or anything else in there to make that happen?
Yeah, that's all in the plan. Yes.
So on the RFP,
Yes.
thank you.
Jack?
Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that concrete slab would be designed as the floor of a future building so that ultimately we can get rid of the 3 containers. Is that correct?
That is correct. Ultimately, that would be what we would want to do.
So the
Eventually, yeah.
specs for that, the specs for the slab should take that into account.
Yes, and they do.
Thank you.
Okay. So should we be putting together like a 5-year plan? And the concrete pad is the first part of the 5-year plan? Because I hate for us to piecemeal something, and this isn't the first time that we've had the side conversation that the real intention is that there be a building there. So if that's the intention, then I would like to see, here's our plan. It's going to be a 25 by 40 building. This is phase 1 of the plan. And phase 2 will occur in so many years so that we know what's coming down the pike and that this is the plan. Does that make sense? Because otherwise we piecemeal this, we slap a slab down now, the mix on the select board changes, possibly on the transfer committee changes, and then this project doesn't get completed or the full intention of the project isn't really made known. Mike?
Yeah, it seems to me that what you're suggesting is a good idea, but we need to have the slab pretty quick because we got problems out there now and they're not going to get better.
Right.
I think we could articulate this whole plan. That is the plan. The first plan was to have a solid gravel pad to put these containers on. That worked for a while until it didn't work anymore. And now we have to move on with the cement pad. Cement pad, as Jack mentioned, was part of the original idea to have a solid floor for a building someday. So, you know, I'm aware, as you are, that there was sort of a long-term plan, which included this floor, this space, this floor, this building. And I think it can be articulated more thoroughly than, but it is there. It just hasn't been put together in you know, complete form, I think, for some time. It's been talked about. I'm guessing we could probably have our engineer on the board sort of put that together in a cohesive fashion that we would be able to go forward with. But the next step is kind of like phase two, which was if phase one was the gravel to set the containers on and the retaining wall. Phase two kind of is the pad, because the gravel has served its purpose and it's sunk. And so now it's time to, you know, move on to that next stage. So I'm guessing we could have Tom Daniels sort of sketch that together in a more plan like Melanie suggests, which is wise. And then we move forward with the next phase, which is the pad underneath the containers.
Isn't our,
Yeah.
isn't our
Yeah.
business tonight to deal with the RFP and let the transfer station committee put their plan together? Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that a year or so ago, when you came before the select board, in the days when we were meeting in person, you had mentioned a building back then.
Yes, yeah, we had that conversation back then, yes.
Yes.
Well, and I think my point, Kathy, is that Jack mentioned the building at that point, and Kenny said, yes, that was the long-term intention. We still don't have that. So at some point, the full intention of what's going to happen at the transfer station or what we would like to happen does need to be made part of a public meeting. So
I don't disagree with that, but I think that the more emergent question is whether or not the heavy containers are sinking into the ground or not.
Bruce, when is the next transfer station committee meeting?
It's the second Monday of each month. The committee, we already, I know you asked Bruce, but I didn't hear Bruce. I'm sorry, Bruce. You want to answer that?
It's be next month. It'll be the second Monday of next month. And the other thing on the containers is, I believe that $20,000 was voted on at town meeting 2 or 3 years ago, but somebody'd have to check back and see the date on that, but that was voted on by the voters. I do.
Well, that's what I thought, was that we voted on the concrete slab last year for $20,000. And
I think
then
it was actually 2 years ago, I think, Melanie. Don't quote me on that, Law.
God, because it seemed like it was last year to me. And then I thought we had the discussion that the $20,000 wasn't spent. So where was that money going to go? And I remember saying that we had earmarked this money for this paving project. So we wanted to make sure that that money was still accessible when the project could move forward.
If I may, the original conversation was that the money was going to come out of our capital reserve account. We never asked to raise and appropriate the $20,000.
Correct.
So, and I think that the committee, our last meeting, we all, the committee agreed to bring it to you guys, the board, just to okay the RFP so we can send it out for some prices, so we can get the ball moving on this.
Melanie, if I can, I think I might have been gone the last time that I recommended we didn't spend any money last year when we started this.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of discouraged it then for the paving and the cement work. So if you want to blame somebody, blame me.
Well, no, I'm not blaming anyone. I
Not
just,
blaming.
you know, it feels like we had made the 20,000. I could have sworn, and that's why I've got the book out, because I could have sworn that $20,000 was set aside or appropriated. There was something in last year's warrant that we were addressing that, because my concern was going to be that moving forward, to make sure that that money didn't revert to the undesignated fund.
I think it wasn't last year's, Melanie, it was the year before.
It was the year before.
Yeah,
Boy,
I
time
don't
flies.
have that, I don't have that book in front of me, but I just went through last year's annual report and it's not in there.
Was
Okay.
2018 maybe?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, so we're here tonight to deal with the RFP.
So if there's $20,000 already set aside, is it set aside that we can earmark for this, and then we can put together an RFP, and anything over and above 20,000? So I guess, number one, we need to make sure that the $20,000 is still in the reserve for the transfer station, earmarked for paving. And anything above that, we would, go ahead, Anthony.
We have more than $100,000 in the transfer station's capital reserves, and the board has complete discretion over how that money is spent.
Okay.
But the thing about it, we're not spending it tonight. We're just gonna get an RFP out to see
Right,
what.
we're just doing the RFP tonight.
Right, that's right.
Then we'd have some figures to go with.
All right.
Make a motion, we do that. We.
I'll second that.
So the RFP would come back to us like the second meeting in February, correct?
I think
Correct.
that's a reasonable expectation.
Okay. So there's a couple things already tagged for that one. That sounds like that's good. We can take care of that then.
That might not be long enough.
Yeah, it may take a while to get the RFP done.
We
Well-
actually already have the guts of the RFP done. It's just a matter of seeking the committee's review and recommendations.
And then the select board reviews, and then we send out the RFP.
Correct.
So if we've got the guts, do we think maybe in February we could have that together, when that would give enough time if we put out, what, so many weeks to have the, we call it estimates? Well,
Yes.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Yes, so we would put out the RFP, allow about a month for people to send us their proposals. We've already had some contractors who have expressed some interest. And ideally, we'd like to get this project done before June 1st, which is when the paving is going to begin.
Okay,
Sounds good. So motioned, Ricky motioned, did
I
somebody?
seconded.
Okay, I thought I heard a second. Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 0 against. All right, next up, we have the discussion of the investments performance. Tom Dowd is here to give us a little rundown on how he thinks we might better proceed.
Melanie, if I may, before Tom begins, I'd like to make just a brief opening statement. And first of all, I'd like to thank Tom for taking the initiative to do this analysis of our earnings on our investments. I think it's pretty enlightening in the fact that he's convinced, I think the rest of the budget committee is convinced, I'm convinced that we could be earning more on our money. Now, since I sent out this packet, Mary Vogel actually suggested I check with the auditor to make sure there's no restrictions about us using a private wealth investment firm to manage the town's portfolio versus a banking institution. And from a state regulation standpoint, there are no restrictions in that regard. However, the town's investment policy does call for us to use a banking institution with a holding company, both of which are authorized to do business in the state of Maine. So if we want to possibly pursue having a private firm manage the town's investments, and I just want you guys to keep this in mind as Tom is going through his presentation, that would require an amendment to our existing policy, which was last amended in 2016 to allow that. And then, because my understanding is Bar Harbor received this business through an RFP competitive process. And so we probably want to go through that again so that we can sort of open it up both to banking institutions and private investment firms in order to get the best possible deal. So I say all that to set the table, and now I'll defer to Tom to explain his insightful analysis.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, about a year ago, most members of the budget committee were present when Bar Harbor did a presentation. And some of the concerns that we came away with from that meeting were that Bar Harbor was trying to time the market, and also that they may have been too conservative in trying to avoid losses. And I think one of the comments was made at the time that you can basically put all your money in a cookie jar and bury it in the backyard if you don't want to have any losses. So what we did here basically is, I have experience with a nonprofit in town that's managed by RM Davis. So I thought it was prudent basically to measure the actual performance of Bar Harbor versus a similar type management firm. And the results basically are in the graph on the first page. And the conclusions I draw from that graph are that even though Bar Harbor is probably being managed more conservatively than the RM Davis portfolio, they were just as bad in the downturn on the market that happened in the January, February, March timeframe. There was really no benefit to the conservative management of Bar Harbor that I can see there. And then what happened is the market started going back up again. Bar Harbor underperformed substantially on the upside. And what you can also see is during the swing in the market, RM Davis became positive in the July timeframe, whereas Bar Harbor Trust didn't become positive until you get into the November timeframe. So the two managers had startling differing results. And if you try to explain it just on being conservative, it really doesn't fly, because you got the worst of both worlds. You didn't get much protection on the downside, and you certainly limited your upside. So if you go to the second page of my presentation, I tried to quantify what did it cost as far as an opportunity cost to the town of Belgrade to have the Bar Harbor Trust versus, say, if RMD had been managing the portfolio. So in calendar year 2019, we have actual data for both investment managers. The opportunity cost would have been about $85,000 in 2019. And in 2020, it's $128,000. And what's particularly troubling in 2020, I'd attribute only about $50,000 of that $128,000 difference to investment style. So if you label Bar Harbor as being conservative and RMD as being more of a growth portfolio, that would explain 50,000 of the difference. I'd say roughly 80,000 of the difference is something else. So what the conclusion I'm drawing here is Bar Harbor basically didn't do a good job as a conservative portfolio manager in 2020. And that also the town of Belgrade is losing substantial amounts of money by being too conservatively invested. So there's really two issues here, in my opinion. And so regardless, I've come to the conclusion that an investment manager such as R.M. Davis would give a much better return to the town. And even if the town were to direct them to have a conservative portfolio, I would expect the return to be substantially higher than we're receiving with Bar Harbor Trust. So that's the gist of my conclusion. Are there any questions?
Melanie, I have a question for Tom.
Okay.
Tom, the nonprofit that you mentioned, I would assume that because it is a nonprofit, it too has a fairly conservative point of view when it comes to their investments. Would that be a fair statement to make?
No, it's more of a growth portfolio of roughly 70% stocks, 30% bonds.
And what's the liquidity involved with that portfolio?
Now, when you say, well, there's a market basically for stocks and bonds, so that if they had to, R.M. Davis could basically sell either asset and turn them into cash.
And just so the board knows, the investment policy is really based on two factors. And the first one is safety, and the second one is liquidity. And those seem to be high priorities for the board and the town at the time that the investment policy was crafted.
And I think if I understand this correctly, and you folks can definitely weigh in and tell me if I'm mistaken, but my understanding is the town manages this portfolio and really takes a minimal amount of money out of the portfolio on a yearly basis. It's very conservative as far as how much money is taken out, because the town is trying to invest for the long term and be able to have a steady stream of income out of the funds. So the question I have is, how important is the liquidity if you're taking such a small portion out of the investment? I mean, the other alternative is the town could put the $1.4 million in either the Kennebec Savings Bank or Bar Harbor Trust money market accounts, and they're perfectly liquid, but the rate of return is pretty low. And the risk of them going down, at least in absolute dollar terms, is low as well. What it doesn't do is it won't keep up with inflation.
Yeah, and that's how our sweep accounts are managed, the ones that we do business from on a day-to-day basis, just as Tom just explained.
Okay. Jack? I was hoping you were weighing in, Jack.
Do you want me now?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I basically agree with Tom and his approach. I was on the board of the Belgrade Regional Health Center, and we had R.M. Davis at that time, and they did a perfectly fine job as far as I was concerned. We had no problem with them. The budget committee in years past, several years past now, got involved with this because it looked like the town wasn't paying much attention to these funds at all. They were scattered around in different bank accounts, and they were brought together into a unified trust, as you know. And the policy in setting it up, and I thought in maintaining it, was to pay out 90% of the dividends and interest on a pro rata basis to each one of the individual funds that was in that unified trust, and maintain the principal for growth, maintain what was in there plus 10% of the earnings for growth. And that's what's been distributed, I think, to the central school, to the cemetery. Those are the big participants in it. I think that, hindsight has 20/20 vision, and the town went with Bar Harbor Trust because their pitch was conservative management. And it looked, with hindsight, I'll agree with hindsight, it looks with hindsight that was the wrong buy. Looking ahead, I think the town should put this out to bid every so often anyway, because it's good to know what's out there and what the competitive market is for managing funds of our nature, and what's been successful and what hasn't been so successful. So I agree with putting out to bid our fund for managing, say, for the next 3 years, depending on results. And looking ahead, I would, up until this point, with the uncertainties that exist with the national administration and with the virus, I look at this as kind of an inflection point now with the changing of the guard nationally to see what the market does. I never would have guessed that the market would have gone up as much as it did with all that has been going on in 2020, but it has. And again, hindsight is good. But I certainly agree with putting it out to bid. I wouldn't hesitate to put Bar Harbor in as one of the bidders and see what's out there. There are some good ones, and I think that I think that the present manager that they've been put up against is a perfectly good candidate. So that's what I would do, but I would stick to our policy of returning, if the people request it, the money to the schools and to the cemeteries, as we have been doing for the last couple of years.
So Jack, you don't have any qualms about considering a private investment firm to manage the portfolio?
No, I don't. As long as they're registered with the state and they follow the rules and they're recognized.
And just to add, I think the advantage of the financial markets is there's statistics like the Standard & Poor's 500 index that we can readily measure the performance of our investment manager against. So no matter who we're using, there's good yardsticks out there to evaluate their performance.
Well, that was one of the things, Tom, I was just saying recently is since the pandemic started, we haven't had an update as a select board as to even the status of our investments. We were getting it quarterly and, that was nice. It was giving us a pretty good idea of where we were at, but since we went all Zoom, we haven't seen them once. And it's one of those things that kind of slips through, I think.
Coincidentally, Melanie, they contacted me today via email to ask if we would like an update from them. So if that's something that the board would like, it's something we could definitely schedule.
Yeah, I'd hate to see that quarterly thing fall off.
What's our goal here with Tom's recommendation and Jack's thoughts? Do we want to actually make a motion to switch this, or do we want to put it out to bid, or?
No, I think, Ernie, what we're looking for tonight is, like with the concrete slab, just some direction from the board. And what we would like to do is to, I'd like to work with the budget committee, look at the RFP that we issued last time, see how that might need to be updated. We can bring that RFP back to the board as well, and then put it out to bid. And if everyone's comfortable with us, also including private wealth investment management companies, we'll send it to them as well, and bring an amendment to the investment policy to the board that would allow for that possibility.
Right, so if we need to amend it, we should do that prior to sending out an RFP.
I think we ought to do a little more investigating in this. Don't jump and run, but I think Tom's on the right move to this, but I think we need some more information on it. This is just between two companies right now. I'd like to see what some of the other ones are doing out there.
Oh, I think we would send it to a host of companies, Rick. I mean, both banking institutions and private firms.
I would hope so.
So I think I would say we, thank Tom for doing this work. It's clear that what he's uncovered is the town can do better under the right circumstances. $200,000 is a lot of money for the town, for considering we often use the earnings alone to pay for various things in the budget. So it makes sense to tighten up this amendment, get an RFP out there, and move forward in some fashion.
I agree. I can tell you at least one other, there's at least one other company out there that brought in 13%.
Yeah.
For the annual. So I think, 3.7%, was that what it was, Tom?
For
Bar Harbor?
Bar Harbor.
Yeah, 3.7. That's a pittance compared to what a lot of people were doing.
Yeah.
I would have expected Bar Harbor to come in somewhere around 10%.
Well, do a lot better than
And they
3.7.
didn't.
Yeah. So you want to go ahead with that amendment, and then we'll move
Well,
on with
so-
some sort.
Yeah, so I think if we can have the, how about, what do we think? Like at the next meeting, if we can take a look at the article that references this and maybe a little bit of the background around it, because we never make an article without something that leads us to that decision. So whatever that was that led us to the decision that we utilize companies that are within the state of Maine, a banking institution, holdings in Maine, whatever the discussion was that led us to that, there's a reason that that was done. So I would like a little bit of the background prior to that, as well as that article itself, so that we don't just overturn a decision that was made by a previous board and budget committee and all of those pieces that the folks had worked together, like what was the reasoning for it? And then we can make a solid decision on moving forward if we're willing to throw that out and change it up a little bit.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand, because as far as I know, there were no articles involved. I mean, this was simply a policy. And the policy was first adopted in 2013. So I may have to tap some people's institutional memories about that, because.
Well, and there really should be, honestly, Anthony, it shouldn't just be institutional memories. And I know this is one of the issues that we're having in Belgrade, is we change servers, and some of our information is not as accessible as it should be. So if, I hate.
I'm just concerned. I'm just concerned that the committee that worked on that at the time, that minutes may or may not have been taken.
It sounds to me, if I may say so, it sounds like a policy that may have been created by the budget committee, based upon information that they had at the time. It doesn't sound to me like something that, the voters ought to be voting on as to what institutions we choose to put investments in. I think that
No.
sounds like a financial decision that ought to be, part of the policy of a budget committee.
Well, and there are a couple of people here gathered in this meeting tonight who signed that policy. So I may be calling them to see what their remembrances are of what was done, when and why.
Jack?
That would be Jack.
In all of the discussions that I can recall as a member of the budget committee, when this was being actively discussed, the idea of periodically putting the investment account out to bid was part of those discussions, and it was discussed positively. We were thinking maybe every 3 years. There was no solid rule recommended to do that, but it was certainly a part of the positive discussions that we had, that we should not just tie ourselves forever to one investment company. We should periodically put it out to bid. And if the company that was active with us at that time came in the best one, all things considered, fine, stay with them. But let's see what the market is offering out there as best we can. Now, you can't have dozens and dozens of people come in, because each one requires a meeting and a presentation, and there are other things to do. But some time will have to be devoted to it, which is reasonable and proper, to look at other offerings that are out there.
Do you recall, Jack, why it was that it was limited to banking institutions in the state of Maine who also had holding companies in Maine? Was it the intention to keep the monies within the state, or was there more to it that you can remember?
No, I don't remember much, if anything, along those lines. As long as it was a company that was a recognized company licensed to do business in the state of Maine, and it was obviously not a fly by night, whether it was a banking institution or a separate investment institution. I think that, as far as the committee was concerned at that time, was fair game.
Okay.
Melanie, as far as the board member, I was probably the one on the board, one of them. We was trying to be pretty conservative. It was a lot of money. We'd never done it before.
Right.
We didn't have any idea how this was going to work. And we was not going into good times at that time. So we was a little worried. We probably set it pretty cautious measures on it.
Well, and I think so too. And that's why I was trying to remember, like, some of the other stuff around it. Because I was on the board at the time too, but it doesn't jump right out at me.
Oh, one of the other things, there was something to do at one point with trusts that state had some stipulations on trust money too, and how it could be invested. And things that may have changed since then too.
Yeah, and again, Dan, I did ask our auditor if there were any regulations in that regard, and she knew of none.
Yeah.
But we can do some research on it.
A little history, I don't have any problems with us looking to find, putting it out for RFP, looking to see if we can get better return on our investments. Nothing like that. I just want us to make sure that we have all the information that we need moving forward, and that there wasn't any particular reason that we said it the way we said it, other than that we were being conservative. Jack?
Safety net.
Yeah, one of the reasons that Bar Harbor comes across as conservative, and I've disagreed with it a little bit, is that they seem to keep too much of the fund in cash rather than have it invested in securities. And the money that is invested in cash virtually makes no money for the town. But for Bar Harbor Trust, they've got a pot of money that they can play with.
That's right. That's right.
And that can be a significant factor. So
Right.
in looking at an investment company, you want to look at that, what their policies and practices are in investing, both in stocks and bonds, but also how much of the fund they keep in cash.
Well, and I remember them coming to us in 19 saying, this is the long-term projection, this is the 2-year projection. And they did say that we are pulling we're coming at this more conservatively than we did the preceding year because of the uncertainty and the sense of impending turmoil, and there was the prediction of a depression. And so I know they had straight up said they were going more conservative with our money. And at the time, we thought that was a good idea because we felt like we were protecting the town from what could possibly be a volatile market.
I'm amazed that the market is as high as it is right now with all that's going on. And I'm
I'm
wondering whether it's near a peak and it's going to fall off some with the new administration. I have no idea, but
We're just going round and round tonight. Can we do some more research and come back to this?
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Dan.
So thank you very much, Tom.
Oh, you're welcome.
So do we want to try to tackle this in February? When does our agreement with Bar Harbor Bank and Trust expire?
I don't know that it has an expiration date. I'd have to go back and check the contract. So, but what I'd like to do is work with the budget committee, come up with a proposed amendment to the investment policy, make sure that we are allowed to do this, and review the RFP that was issued in 2016, see what updates are necessary, come back to you guys with the RFP and with the proposed amendment.
And any history that we can find around 2013 too?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We have a consideration of a request to lower the speed limit on the Taylor Woods Road. Bob Cliff is here. He's the owner of New England Golf and Tennis Camp, and he has put forth a request for the board to consider. I take a motion to open this item.
Good motion.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That item is open for discussion. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just the road Taylor Woods that connects Route 8 and Route 11. Cars, I think it's marked as 45, but I mean, there's cars that are going 65, 70. Sometimes a lot of dump trucks coming from Smithfield, cutting over, or flying in. When we're pulling out we're right off of Taylor Woods, but so when we're pulling onto Taylor Woods for our camp vans, it's pretty scary just to make that left-hand turn onto Taylor Woods. Cars they're flying. It's a couple months ago when I was over there was 2 cars that were drag racing. And I know there's other people that live on Taylor Woods that and their homes are very close to the road, and they have concerns about the vehicles flying by. And again, it's a short road. I think maybe a little less than a mile. And if there's any way to lower the speed limit, I think it would be really helpful. Again, I just think it's a matter of time before something bad happens, or someone's pulling out of their driveway. And it's every year it just seems to get worse. The last couple of years, I've noticed that more and more dump trucks and big vehicles are cutting over from Route 8 over to 11, and they're just flying on that road there. So if there's anything we could do to slow it down a little bit, I would be very appreciative. And I know other people on that road would be appreciative also.
I can see his point. It's a short road. There's really isn't any big need to go real fast on that road, I wouldn't think, but what's the town policy? We went through this a little bit on the West Road, changing the speed limit. It's kind of convoluted, isn't it? Maybe Anthony, do you know?
I was told that these requests come to the board, and if the board wants the town to pursue it, then we would request a study from the DOT.
And is there a petition policy that's in place as well? Like it has to be a number of folks on the road that agree that the speed limit there is too fast? Because of course, according to the state, there's guidelines, what are designated as 25-mile-an-hour zones, has to be so much residential, blah, blah, blah. So what the mixes are that we go by. Bruce?
Is there anybody else on that road that's asking for a speed reduction?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to people and I could get, if you would like, I could get it in writing from them. Be more than
That'd
happy
be
to do
good.
that.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, unfortunately, the town does not have the right to change the speed limit. The state does that. They'll come out and they'll do their surveys and they'll decide whether the request is reasonable or not. Unfortunately, I sympathize with Bob, but that's the way it works. And that's the way it worked on the West Road.
So do we as a town and a select board make that request to the DOT?
Yeah, it can't hurt for you to make the request and put the power of the select board behind the request.
Okay, Ricky?
Well, I'm one of the dump trucks that go through there quite often. And if you're coming from Route 8, going to Route 11, if you're going 35 miles an hour down through there, you're going fast because that hill killed you. Coming the other way, you're usually empty and you can't do 45 down through there. I don't know where you're getting your numbers. I'd like to see it on radar, I guess, but I bet cars probably do it, but the trucks look like they're going a lot faster than what they are. I'll tell you that right off the bat.
Now, Anthony, the speed sign that we have in Belgrade, where's that currently?
It's currently in storage because it's not very good for use during the winter time.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think if they took a survey, probably it would be, if possible, closer to, maybe the end of spring, early summer when the roads.
When traffic picks up going across there.
I know it, and at one point, I guess, that road is posted. Usually.
It is in the spring of the year.
Yeah, for the beginning of spring. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not out there with the radar, but even when our mailbox is right on the road, and by the way, our mailbox has been taken out 4 times in the last 3 years. I'm not out there with the radar, but it's, I mean, the cars are definitely going faster than 45. And yeah, maybe it seems like the dump trucks are going faster, but I just think for a road that short, 30 miles an hour would probably be more appropriate. Is there any way also, I know where Golf Academy Drive is, there's that hill, and so there's a blind spot. I don't know if there could be, they call them blind driveway signs or something like that. If that's something we could also possibly.
On the signs, I believe the policy is that if the people want to buy them, we'll put them up. But I don't think we furnish the signs for that.
So is it possible, Anthony, can we just do a little bit of research? I mean, if there is a blind drive, because I know when I moved onto the West Road, the hills up above my house are downright dangerous. There was not a school bus stop where we are. And the bus garage contacted the town to ask that a school bus stop sign be posted above our house on the West Road. And it was like a month later, there was a sign. So there's there's some, we do have some discretion on what can be put on the signs, but I guess if we can make sure we've just got clarification on that, Anthony.
In that case, the school bought the sign, we put it up.
Is that what happened?
I believe so.
And I would think, I mean, if we can get the speed sign out in the spring, when that can be used, we have the ability to track that data, correct, Anthony?
We do.
So, Bob, if we were to look at this in stages, is that okay with you? If we
Yeah, that would be great.
Let
I
us
mean,
know.
honestly, anything you could possibly do, I'd be appreciative.
So speed limit sign, check some of the data, once it's been there for, say, 2 weeks or a month, maybe both.
You
And
wouldn't want it there more than 2 weeks. Otherwise, people stop paying attention to it.
what about 2 weeks on one side, 2 weeks on the other?
That we could do.
And then if we look at a month's worth of data on that road as we're approaching summertime, where it does tend to get a little bit busier. Because, and the other thing I would suggest, I guess, would be to check with the neighbors on the road, because it seems like we need to have more than one person requesting a speed change on the road. So if there's a petition that can be started, something that can go to the town, then if we have all these pieces of information together, then we could craft a letter to send to the state to request, if that's what is the board's pleasure.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk to the people that live right near us, and then on the other, down on the other end, the Whisperwood people, and you want like kind of you want a form, or do you just want like individual letters from each of them?
Probably if there's one statement.
Yeah.
And, so many folks on the road sign it, that would serve as a petition. Everybody has the same goal. I think if you ask folks to write individual letters, you're probably going to have less participation.
Yeah. Okay.
Versus if they just fill it in.
Okay. I will, I'll work on that over the next few weeks. And should I just drop it off at the town office, or would you email it?
Yep, or email it, either way. Does anybody else on the board have any other suggestions that might help in the meantime?
So Bob, you would need to bring that by the town office, because petitions do have to be certified by our clerks.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Sounds great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your consideration. So thank you very much.
All right, we thank you for coming and bringing it to our attention.
Okay. Have a good night.
Good night.
You have a good night. All right, next up, we have the consideration of placing a foreclosed property for sale by sealed bid, which is the policy in the town of Belgrade. I take a motion to open this item.
So be it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? This item is open for discussion. All right. Anthony, do you want me to read your blurb, or do you want to read it?
You go ahead.
All right, the property at 1005 Augusta Road has entered foreclosure on January 11, 2021, after the property owner failed to pay $2,362 in property taxes, interest, and costs for 2018. There's a perpetuity article updated in 2020 that authorizes the select board to sell foreclosed property via a sealed bid process. Attached is the policy detailing that process, which begins with the board authorizing the property to be placed for sale by sealed bid. The policy provides one avenue for delinquent taxpayers to retain ownership of their property prior to the acceptance of a bid. Once we have advertised for sale, the former property owner is sent a final letter stating they have until the next board meeting to pay all taxes and fees associated with the property. This includes liens, legal fees, and advertising fees in accordance with our policy on redemption of foreclosed properties. The property owner has been invited to attend tonight's meeting. I don't see that they've chosen to join.
He is not with us, but when the time is right, he also sent a written statement in case he didn't make it that he wanted me to read to you guys.
I think the time would be now.
All right, I'll read this. He writes, "We are not trying to avoid paying the taxes. We had a major oil spill and the reputation of possibly salt contamination in the water a few years ago, in which the DEP is still working on it. I will be awarded damages soon for having 10,000 gallons of oil deposited on my lawn. Already, we've had several people back out of a possible sale of the property. One wanted to make beer there, but the reputation is now tainted. A person from the coast wanted to put a huge lobster tank there. That's no longer a possibility. If I can't reopen a viable canoe shop there, I may install a nonprofit rest stop with a bathroom for the public. There is damage to the building from the fire and would like the assessor to see the aftermath of an oil crash. Thanks a lot." And I will say the assessor happened to be in the office on Friday. He and I did go over and inspect the outside of the building on Friday. It is worth noting that this property was evaluated along with the rest of the town in 2012. And then the property values were decreased as a result of the dilapidation of the building in 2016 and decreased pretty significantly.
Did you know damage to the building from the fire of the oil spill?
We did not.
If I may, we went through this a few years ago, same thing.
Yep.
Again, we heard some stories about what was gonna happen. We can't do that. Not fair for the other taxpayers in this town to pick up the slack that this person's not paying. We gotta go through with what we got for policy.
Yep.
All that have the policy.
Great.
I have a thought is that, if seems to me, if I was in, dire straits for some reason, financial trouble or whatever, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to pay my taxes when they were due, there are ways to get, come before the board, get in the basement, whatever it might be to make that choice. We're talking about taxes from 2018 that haven't been paid. And we've been through this before with this gentleman. And so, if it was a one-time deal and, he fell on hard times or what have you, I find his claim about awaiting a payout regarding the oil spill kind of specious, because the town's already received its money for reimbursement for the rescue call and so forth that they went through. And, that was some time ago now. So I don't know. I find that kind of hard to fathom.
Like the motion, we follow through with our policy and do what we need to do.
I agree. I would second that.
Yep, I will too.
We've been here before,
We have, it's like a repeating record.
and it will continue to repeat. If
And we'll-
history
that'd be-
teaches us anything.
I'd be willing to bet next year we look at 2019. Same
Yeah.
thing.
That's what happened last time is,
So the policy is to foreclose and sell, right? To sell it.
Yeah, you put the property up for
sealed bid?
sale by sealed bid.
Let's do it.
So Ricky, that's your motion. It was seconded by Dan, correct?
I think Kathy.
Oh, or Kathy. Any further discussion on this? All right, seeing none. Oh, may as well take a, Ricky, what's your pleasure?
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ernie?
Yes.
All right, 5-4. Let's put this property up for sale. And send a notice to the property owner that that's the intention. And now sending the letter to them, do we need to do that by certified mail stating that this is the process?
Yeah, it's all spelled out.
We will do that. We sent 3 certified letters letting them know about the possibility of this foreclosure happening, and all 3 letters were returned. So we will definitely call him on the phone, and we'll send a certified letter, but I'll also offer to hand deliver a letter to him if need be.
Honestly, he gets to be a grown-up. And I appreciate your thoughts with that, but I think as long as the town crosses the T and dots the I, sends a letter via certified mail, we have the receipt that we've sent the letter, then we've done what we need to do legally.
Absolutely.
Our policy says how we have to do it anyway with the letter,
Yeah.
right in the policy.
All right, moving on, we have the town warrant. And yes. Anthony, do you want to, oh, sorry, I'll take a motion. Moved by Ricky, motion, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of opening the item? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ricky, just pop your hand up. All right, Anthony, up 5, 4, open for discussion.
Yes, this is warrant number 6 in the amount of $85,858.46.
All right. All right. I think I did that backwards. We've already moved and seconded, so it's open for discussion. On page 2, I have a question under the recreation programs, check number 20872. We have a chlorine powder pillow. What is that?
Yeah, so those are little capsules that we use as part of the water testing that is done at the Center for All Seasons for the Department of Environmental Protections.
It's the first time I've ever seen this.
Yeah, I asked about it as well.
So why would that come under recreation programs though? Because we pay for the water testing out of another fund. Wouldn't that be part of the water testing if it's required?
Perhaps. This is something that the water testing is typically done by our facility maintenance director, but our recreation director is the one who.
Oh, sorry, you muted yourself, Anthony.
Sorry. So our water testing is done by our facility maintenance director, but the recreation director is the one who turned in this receipt. And so that's probably why it's on the recreation program budget. So when we purchase something, we turn in the receipts with the account number on it. She put a recreation account number on it versus a facility maintenance account number. So if the board wants to pay it out of facility maintenance, we could very easily do that.
So what happens with a chlorine pill? I mean, I guess this is literally the first I've heard of this, and it's something that we do all the time. So
I did not ask a whole lot of details about it. I was just told they were tablets that we use as part of the water testing process. So we gather a sample, we put this in the sample, and then we turn the sample into the DEP.
okay. Well, probably out of facilities maintenance would make more sense, wouldn't it? If that's where we pay for the water test, if this is part of it. Do we not have to use those same, like the Dalton property? Do we need to be doing the same thing there? Because it's part of the same water source. And in years past, there was an issue with the water.
Melanie, all I can tell you is we're just following what the DEP tells us that they want done with this particular water test. So I assume if they wanted something differently done at the other sites, then they would let us know about that.
Okay. All right, on page 3, under Inland Hospital, check number 20875, the firefighter COVID test. Is that not covered by our insurance?
I don't know. I would have to check on that just to see if that's.
They are not.
Who's that?
That's
Sorry,
me.
that's Nick. Sorry.
Sorry, there you are. I'm like, who's talking?
Actually, MMA called us about that and said we don't cover COVID tests. So then they sent us the bill.
Oh, see, that just makes me angry.
Yeah, I was a little confused by it too, but I asked them why. They said they just don't cover the COVID test. So
Gosh, I want to argue that one.
Oh, you're talking to the wind.
Yeah. All right, and the Village Green flags is also on there. What are these flags?
That's the main state flag had become tattered. And so we replaced that flag. And at the same time, we went ahead and bought a new American flag for when it needs to be replaced.
Those are really nice flags for $165.
Well, the American flag is actually pretty cheap. It's the main state flag, since it's more of a specialty flag, is a little bit more expensive. And you have to buy a nice quality flag, otherwise they don't last any time at all up there flapping in the wind and in the elements.
Oh, I know. I just purchased my one to change mine out this spring for the same thing. You get about a year out of them. All right, that's all I had on it. Does anybody else have anything?
I have a question.
Shoot.
Page 5, the plowing contract. Is that full payment on the plowing contract? I don't remember how much the contract was for.
No, there's a payment schedule for that, Kathy. The contract is, I think, somewhere around $600,000. Let me look real quick. I can tell you what the payment schedule is.
While he's looking that up, Maine Municipal, are they considered a private insurance company?
I think they're a private nonprofit, frankly.
Yeah, they would be. When you say private.
Well, I'm just
versus-
curious. I just looked it up. It says as of July 15th, 2020, federal law requires private insurance company Medicare and Medicaid to cover COVID tests without any cost to the patient.
I would assume, like Kathy said, that the MMA is definitely a nonprofit. Whether or not it's public versus private, I couldn't answer that question.
Well, that may be one you want to argue with them about.
I know. Thank you for backing me wanting to argue that. I'm like, how can they say we're not covering this? Bruce?
Probably Mimic it's not paying for, because that probably fell on the Mimic. Workers' comp.
That shouldn't be under workers' comp though.
Well, if it was somebody got a possible
Exposure.
It
exposure
should be under workman's
on a
comp, I
job,
would think.
on a rescue call or a fire call, that would fall on the workers' comp.
True.
But is this one person's test?
I don't know. I don't.
That is, it's one person's test.
Yeah, they can go to the airport and get it done for $25.
And go to Walgreens, get it for nothing.
That's right.
Yeah, well, we have to follow a guideline through CDC and through EMS.
I understand that.
And that's why it just feels like it makes perfect sense for our fire and rescue folks to be able to get the test under the insurance that's provided.
Not all of us are covered by the town health insurance.
If it's happened when you're on a call, the workman's comp case.
Right.
Yep.
So that's how we get a little trigger there. Okay.
I bet Scott's got something to say. I saw him on there twice.
I saw him pop up and then he disappeared again.
All I want to say is good luck with fighting it, because they
Right.
make their rules the way they want, and that's just what's going to happen. But it's worth questioning, definitely.
Worth me making a note for next year's LD bills for the state.
Attaboy, Dan.
There you go.
Fight for the town.
We'll mention your name.
All right. Does
So-
anyone
so-
else have anything on this warrant?
So let me answer Kathy's question. The
All right.
annual contract for the plowing this year is actually, I was way off, $261,000. And the payments go from, their monthly payments from October through May that range anywhere from $13,000 to $26,000.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none. Ernie, what's your pleasure?
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
All right. 5-4-0 against. All right. Next up, we have the town manager's report.
All right, we got several interesting items here. First of all, I sent you guys, along with this packet, the proposed amendment to the 2016 agreement with the Friends of the Belgrade Lakes Village. And so this is related to the electric cost of the pedestrian lighting. You have that amendment. It's pretty short, just slightly more than a page long. And it addresses three things: the electric utility cost, striking any language that indicates that the Friends bear any responsibility for the operation of the sidewalk lighting system. And then at the Friends request, they wanted to make clear that their intent in the 2016 agreement was that they not be responsible for winter maintenance of the sidewalks. And so this is before you now, and if you have any changes that you would like to see made to it, we can make those changes and then bring it back for your approval at the next meeting. And both Carol Johnson and Diane Oliver are on this meeting call, so they might be able to answer any questions you might have.
Well, and Anthony, I think when you sent me the agenda and you had asked about this item, what I said is that we could give the ideas to the select board. It wasn't intended to be taken up this evening. I do want to make sure that we have the authority to change an agreement that was adopted by a vote of the people by amending the portions of it that we feel or are no longer pertinent or no longer reflect the original intention.
Yep, but Melanie, I'm not convinced that this is something that the town voted on. The town voted on the acceptance of the gift. The actual agreement with the Friends were details about who would be responsible for what once the project was completed. And so I don't believe that the town voted on this agreement. I think this was a contract that was approved by the select board and executed by the select board and the Friends.
I believe that's true.
Agree.
I think that our voting was only about accepting the money. That I remember. And I remember this contract too. But ordinarily, the town doesn't vote on contracts, do they?
No.
Okay, you can keep going, Anthony.
Okay, so do you guys have any questions about this, or are we good to bring this back on the February 2nd agenda?
I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, so after we voted on the warrant articles, it was brought to my attention that there was an article that was passed in 2018 that dedicates the Dalton rental revenue to the facilities capital reserve. And you may recall that as part of the 2021 budget, we dedicated that revenue towards the facility maintenance budget. And so now we're sort of left with two choices as far as I can see. One is that we could just keep the article as is with the Dalton revenue helping to support facility maintenance in the coming year. That facility capital reserve currently has in excess of $50,000 in it. The other choice is that we remove the Dalton income from that facility maintenance article and revote on the recommendations.
Can we change the warrant article and simply take the revenue from the capital reserve and apply it to facilities maintenance?
I think it would be, I think doing it that way, you could, it sort of be, the end effect would be 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. You'd end up at the same place, just through different paths.
But then next year, the Dalton property money would go to the facilities capital reserve, which was the
Yes.
intention. And then,
Yeah. And so one of the things that we are working on, and luckily we've got Mary Vogel on board, and you all know how organized she is, but we're really getting a good comprehensive list together for this year's annual report so that we have all of the perpetuity articles that are in effect and all of the articles regarding our capital reserve. And we'll continually update those year after year, just to ensure we have a good accounting of things for which we have not always had a good accounting.
what do you guys think?
Sounds to me like it'd be simpler to just put it in the facilities budget instead of having it separate.
So what I'm hearing you say, Ernie, is just leave the article as is, as was voted on last week.
I think so. I don't, like you say, it's 6 to 1, half dozen the other. Seems to me that rather than having a separate budget for the, if I'm reading this right, yeah.
When we had that perpetuity article, that's basically a perpetuity article. It typically all say until changed by a future vote. I mean, by changing this article and redesignating money, that's a future vote. I mean, we should be able to leave it just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then it wouldn't be a perpetuity article anymore.
Right. It'd be done, and it would be changed to whatever we're doing now with it.
And move it forward to just do that annually.
We could, or you could come up with a different article next year, so.
So it would just get voted on an annual basis.
Well, and if we leave it the way it is, which we've already done, that does change it's changed by a future vote, because the future vote would be 2021.
Right.
And then next year it would no longer be a perpetuity article, it would be an annual article.
Right. I think I get
So
that.
essentially, we don't have to do anything.
I think that's what's confusing me. Aren't we supposed to do something? No.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think we have to. If we just leave what we've already done.
Yes, that's done. We're done.
Yeah, and basically, we're just saying there's enough now in the facilities capital reserve, and we want to use the money for something else now.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I weigh in?
Who's up?
It's
That's
me.
Mary.
Yeah, so the problem is that the Dalton revenue is already designated by perpetuity to the facilities reserve account. And so you're going to have to redact that article. That's a perpetuity article. So you're going to make another article, and then you're going to change it. You can't just overwrite the article. And I think if Anthony spoke with Becky, I think that Becky Seal, she would say the same thing. You can't just overwrite the article. The money is already designated, and it's designated, that revenue is designated to the facilities reserve account. Just change the article that's there and have the money come out of the facilities reserve account instead of the Dalton revenue is, my suggestion, but anyway.
And that's a change that's obviously very easily made. It's made with a few keystrokes, just changing the language on there. And so if you guys want to do that, I don't know if you'd feel comfortable just going ahead and voting on that recommendation right now. I have this on my screen. If you guys want to, do you guys want to see the article?
What are we actually doing? What are we changing? Just a couple words in that?
Yes, sir. So right now, where we have the Dalton revenue as a revenue source to support the facilities capital reserve, instead of saying Dalton revenue, we would say facilities capital reserve in the same amount, which was $20,000. Does that make sense, Rick?
Well, it's not really what it was set up. Well, I guess it was. It was set up for an account to be able to use on any of the facilities, not just the Dalton property or the All Seasons. It was any place that needed something else done.
Right.
That's what the idea of that was when we set that up. But I guess I got to think a little bit more on this.
Let me call it up here because I do have it on
Yeah, pull it up. I'd like to see it.
my screen here. Where is it? Oh, you know what? Here we go.
You know, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. If it's the same thing, let's just do it and move on with it. Yeah.
That's not it. Hold
I
on.
think you took my picture. It's doing the same thing. If it's going to be able to be used for any of the facilities, I don't.
Yes, that's correct.
That's fine. If you're saying 6 of one, half dozen the other, yes. Simple is what I'd like.
But I think if we change the article that was already voted to move forward by the select board and the budget committee, do we have to then reconvene to change that? Or do we do like Ann says, and the perpetuity articles do read unless changed by a future vote? So if this changes the vote, then it takes it out of perpetuity and becomes annual again.
Fine.
No, I thought yeah, here it is. Come on. Oh, no, you know what? The only one I captured was the one regarding the snowmobiles. So I don't have that one here. So.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, it is just a matter of changing where it says Dalton rental revenue, just changing it to say facilities capital reserve.
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Do we have to revote? I think legally we have to revote.
Yes.
So how many members of the budget committee do we have?
I don't think budget committee, it wasn't raising any money, so.
We're not dealing with any money, just.
Oh, because we weren't raising any, we were appropriating. So yeah, I think we can do it here.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All right, any further discussion?
Other than you don't know who made the motion and to rescind it from the last one, right?
True.
Probably not.
Oh, and I don't want to dig into my budget book right now. I've got a stack over there.
It's fine.
We'll just vote on it. We can always rescind the other one. Other night.
Yeah, how about at our next meeting, Anthony? So we vote on this moving forward, and at our next one, we see who did what, and then we just clean that up.
Okay.
Make sure we check all those legal boxes. All right. If there's no further discussion, Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Dan?
Yes.
Ricky?
Yes.
Ernie?
Yes.
All right, 5 for change them.
Okay. So let's talk about the food pantry and the snowmobile club. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I think we can all agree that we very much value both of those organizations. And the suggestions to potentially change warrant articles is only meant to ensure that we continue to support those organizations and their good works in a way that is legally advisable. And so since Mary Lou is here, we'll talk about the food pantry first. As you guys know, Becky Seal and I have been working on some of these perpetuity articles, and she raised a concern about an appropriation being granted as a perpetuity article. That in her mind, legally, perpetuity articles are meant to really deal with processes more than appropriations, and appropriations are something that the voters should consider on an annual basis. And so we had two places where we were essentially appropriating to support organizations in perpetuity. One of those was for the food pantry's use of the North Belgrade Community Center, which comes with a in-kind donation from the town of the electric cost that we pay in order to support that work. I reached out, so it's Becky Seal's opinion that that does constitute an appropriation that should be dealt with annually. I reached out to the MMA to see if they agree with that. I did not receive a response today. We don't have to act on this tonight, but if you want to hear what the MMA has to say about it. But in Becky's opinion, that does constitute an appropriation that voters should consider on a yearly basis.
Now, Anthony, it's not just a donation, however, it was when the food pantry was housed in the existing town office. So at the time, and I remember Jack was one who brought that up, that we needed to be clear that the electrical costs were covered by the town, that that's considered a donation. He wanted everything clear around it, but it's not just the electrical cost, because it's the use of the facility, it's the maintenance of the facility. I believe we have stuff on the budget this year for replacing flooring, and a couple of years ago, it was the roof, or maybe that's coming up now. But so there's a lot more to it than just the electrical, correct?
Well, we do obviously allow them to use the facility. Typically, we would charge people rent for that, which we don't do with the food pantry. But you know, other than the electrical, would be hard for me to imagine anything that's really a direct cost that we give to the food pantry. And Mary Lou, if you think I'm misstating anything, please jump in.
No, I agree. It is the electrical cost. But if I'm not mistaken, it was last year or the year before that it was brought before the voters, and it was voted on that we would never have to vote on this again, that we would remain in the North Belgrade Community Center. Right, Mike?
Yeah, that was my recollection too. Yes,
and you're correct. There is a perpetuity article on the books, and again, this is one of those that didn't make it onto our list, and we sort of forgot about it. But as we were going back through these things, it struck us that this was a situation that was similar to the concerns that Becky had raised about the snowmobile club. I asked Becky if we were comparing apples to apples, and in her mind, we were.
You know, this is where I got a little problem. If it's not broke, why are we fooling with it? You know what? I never got phone calls in the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm getting pretty upset about it. I mean, people are calling pretty hot. You know, from just changing articles. We don't need to be doing that. It's not broke. Leave it alone. We've been doing this for years. I don't know why all of a sudden we got to start doing this. And you're going to hear some more in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, all I can tell you, Rick, is the same thing I've told Mary Lou and what I've told the president of the Snowmobile Club. We continue to support their good works, but we're government. And so we enact laws and we enforce laws, and we're also honor bound to follow them. And all we're simply trying to do is find the best legal way to continue to provide the support that we've always provided.
But it's all in how we interpretate the law. I mean, I can look at it one way and think of it, this is the right way. You can look at it another way and think it's the right way. If it's not bothering, leave it alone.
Well, and Rick, that's why I'm relying on people with legal backgrounds to give us advice on these things versus this is not my interpretation. You know, this is what trained attorneys have said that, you know, this is the right and best way to go about this.
And maybe we ought to be looking at the town's attorney and not MMA. I haven't got a lot of faith in MMA, believe me.
And we could go the town attorney route, and several people have suggested that. But you know, the town attorney is expensive, and so I was trying to use the resources that we had available to us that wouldn't cost us any additional money.
Is the MMA going to go to court with us when we get called on, if we should? No, they're not. We need that that's going to represent us.
So my understanding here, so we've got an existing contract with the food pantry that expired in 2019. So I don't, maybe it was my hiatus from the board, but I don't remember an agreement, seeing it or discussing it, talking about it at town meeting that said this is the way it is forever.
There was an amendment put before the town, before the voters of the town, and they approved it. That it was a forever until somebody changed it.
Yeah, so Mary Lou's right. That was approved by the voters in 2019.
Okay, so then what is this blurb here then? So the existing agreement then is an agreement for forever?
Yeah, no. So when we were going back through, we saw this this article from 2016 approving a 3-year agreement. We thought the agreement had expired because that perpetuity article was not on our list in this year's annual report of the articles that were in effect. We simply forgot that that was something that was approved in 2019. So there is a perpetuity article that was approved by the voters in 2019.
Right.
So we have a
Go
perpetuity.
ahead, Mike.
What's the question?
I just checking, like, do we need a new agreement? Or do we not need an agreement?
So we either leave the perpetuity article as is, or we appropriate that gift on an annual basis.
Is there something in our 2019 book that shows the perpetuity articles? Because
So that's what I'm saying, Melanie, is that article that was approved in 2019 did not make it into the 2020 book. So you'd have to look at the 2018 book. You'd have to look at the 2018 book.
Okay, so
the article that was approved in
okay, so it was approved in 2018,
2019.
because this is the 2019 book.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That article is not in the list of the perpetuity articles. It was sloppiness that article was not listed among the perpetuity articles in that book. If you look in the 2018 book, you'll see the article that was approved in 2019.
Okay. Okay, I don't have that book handy. It's downstairs. So we don't need a new agreement then if there is already an agreement.
There's a perpetuity article in effect.
And so why are we questioning it?
So is it the donation of the electrical cost that we need to be doing on an annual basis because it's an annual donation?
That's Becky Seal's contention.
Well, with all due respect to Ms. Seal and everything.
I got you. I see Mike and Bruce. I'll get you both in a sec.
I'm just saying, with all due respect to Becky Seal, I think that one always has the option, either somewhat foolishly or not, to follow an attorney's advice. And I frankly think that it's overkill, frankly.
Okay, Mike, you had your hand up first.
Let Bruce go first.
Okay, Bruce, tag, you're up.
Voters have spoke, leave it the way it is. The voters have voted on it, have spoken, have made the decision on it, leave it the way it is.
I don't think anybody's saying boot him out.
No, I ain't saying vote it out. I don't think we should change the article, but voters have already voted on it. It was just 2 years ago. I don't, you're gonna get, if you bring it up again, it's just gonna be the same thing. If voters are gonna approve it, hands down. I mean, I just think this is a lot of wasted paperwork and a lot of your wasted time trying to discuss some of this stuff that, like Ricky said, it's not broke. Leave it alone.
Okay, Mike?
Can't hear you.
Hang on, Mike. You're still muted. Nope, you're still muted.
Still muted.
Can you click your space bar? Will that unmute you? No? Anthony, is there any way for us to override his
All
muting?
right, I got it. It just, the whole thing disappeared, so. I don't know that this needs to be decided tonight. Am I correct in that? And if that is correct, I would ask that you consider tabling the item till next week. I have an idea that might solve this problem, but I can't, I need some time to try to get it to work. So if that's something you'd consider till the next meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Well, and I guess I'm just trying to figure out what we're even doing with this one. If that's what we're asking, is if we just approve the electrical costs that are already tucked in under another budget. Is it the donation piece of it?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I understand. If you are of a mind to just continue what we're doing, then forget what I said. There's no need to table it. But if you are considering changing it, then I'm asking you wait till the next meeting to do it.
I'd like to make a motion just to withdraw the snowmobile and food pantry article. Just withdraw them.
I'll
Just leave them
second
the way
that.
they are.
I seconded it.
So what do you mean well, we don't want to withdraw the articles. There's perpetuity articles.
No, we're withdrawing the ones that we're putting forward to change them. The perpetuity ones are still there.
Yeah.
I just want to withdraw the new articles and just leave well enough alone.
Well, so the snowmobile piece, trust me, I spent way more hours on this weekend that I'm never going to get back. And again today. It's $2,000 that we're talking about. That's the check that gets cut from, or that was cut in 2020 to the Dragon Masters.
Wait a minute. Are we now switching to the snowmobile? We haven't finished with the food pantry.
Well, I don't think we're not really, I don't know if we're acting on them. Anthony kind of grouped those two together. So I mean, what we're talking about here for total monetary amounts is not astronomical.
That's why I made the motion to withdraw both those articles.
So the motion's been made, the motion's been seconded, and we're trying to get to a vote, right?
It wasn't seconded. And
I have the,
Yeah, I seconded it.
Ricky did.
okay,
Seconded.
so
if you're,
was this voted on by the budget committee as well? This put us in a little bit of a pickle with that?
No,
No?
they did.
Okay.
if you're interested, I have the 2018 book here. I could read this perpetuity article to you if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. We may as well put it into public record again.
Okay, so it was Article 12. And it was to proceed with voting by secret ballot on the following question. Shall the town of Belgrade authorize the select board to continue the agreement between the town and the Belgrade Rome Special Needs Food Pantry unless changed by a future vote, with any associated cost to be considered as a donation by the town to the food pantry?
Perfect.
That was that.
Neat and tidy. Can we keep it?
I'm fine with it.
I say we keep it.
Well, and just, I don't mean to roll this stone up the mountain anymore, but what, Anthony, your contention is that a town legal representative, has looked at this and claimed there was some sort of legal aspect that we weren't following and we needed to change it somehow. Is that what it?
So keep in mind, Becky had a concern that this was not the legally advisable way to go about it. She checked with the head of MMA Legal Services and her chief attorney, and they agreed, although they did allow that other municipal attorneys may disagree with their stance. And so at this point, honestly, this is not worth fighting about.
No, it's not. So as Ricky says, it sounds like there's a couple of different ways to interpret the legal ramifications or, way this is worded or whatever. And so let's just leave it the way it is. We're interpreting it this way and let's move
So
on.
let's go back to Dan's motion and Ricky's second.
We're still at the discussion part.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
still talking. All right, does anybody else have anything else to weigh in?
I'm gonna call for the vote.
Thank
Okay,
you.
discussion is ended. All right, so the motion on the floor is to not amend the perpetuity articles that deal with the Belgrade Rome Food Pantry and the Snowmobile Association. I just want to make sure for clarification, do we have to identify the Snowmobile Club legally?
I think we're fine with it. I think everybody knows. At least I've heard enough about it this week.
Right, but in our perpetuity article, do we have to identify, what if another snowmobile club opens up in Belgrade? Not that I see
No,
that.
then I'm sure that one will close
Do
up.
anything
We won't
like
have two different snowmobile clubs doing it.
All right, well, if we're good with that and we don't have to identify it by law, let's not do it. So Ricky, you said yes, Dan,
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
All right, 5, we'll leave it alone.
Okay, and
Thank
so
you.
we will just remove that article dealing with the snowmobile club from the town warrant for 2021.
And basically is a perpetuity article will just remain in effect, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I have that here as well, if anybody wants to hear that.
No, thank you.
Okay, good.
All right.
I'm gonna leave and quit while I'm ahead.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, so I have one more fun thing for you guys to consider, and that is we have 25 tax accounts that owe anywhere from 6 cents to $2.93. And rather than having to deal with that administratively and printing those names in the town book, we'd like to pay that $30.82. Yeah, $30.82 out of the overlay from this year's taxes.
Oh, for God's sake, I'll pay it.
I was gonna say, we'll just take it out of Anthony's check.
I'll pay it. Thank you.
I'm agreeable to anything at this point, Dan.
You don't want to have I don't want my name in there saying it was 6 cents.
Yeah, just paying it out of the
I
old.
don't know
place.
6 cents, by the way, but I'm not on the list.
I'll make the motion and it comes out of the overlay.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
No.
Did you say please no?
Yeah.
All right, seeing none. Ernie, what's your pleasure?
Yes.
Ricky,
Yeah, whatever.
Dan,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Yes.
All right, 5-4. Hope that doesn't run that dry.
Okay.
I'm done.
Is there anything else that anybody has that they want to throw forward? All right, I'll take a
Not
motion
at
to
not at
adjourn.
this time. There's gonna be, but I gotta wait.
All right, you keep stewing about it.
You will.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Come on, give us a hint,
Make
Rick.
that motion.
So be it.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Good night, everybody.
Night, night.
Thanks.
Thank you all.